My name is Matt Lang, and I lead the BI practice here at KSM Consulting, and I am excited to get you all started with business intelligence in your organizations. Though a lot of the content today is going to be focused on the small to medium-sized businesses, a lot of the topics and best practices that we will be covering are applicable to enterprise corporations and nonprofit organizations, such as foundations, school districts, and city-county governments. To keep us on track today, we created this high-level agenda that's going to start with the BI landscape. So in that category, we'll focus on the various types of visualization technologies, how data warehousing strategies have transitioned over the course of the last few years, and similarly, infrastructure technologies such as on-premises and cloud technologies. And then we'll jump into the 5 steps you guys can utilize to get started with BI. We'll start with value propositions, transition to preparing your data, and then ending with iterating on your dashboards. And then the steps that you can take to develop a BI strategy for your organization. So jumping into the business intelligence landscape, there is one main takeaway that I want you to come away from this webinar. So if you don't learn anything else today, I want you to learn this, and that is that business intelligence is not a dashboard. So when I'm out talking to my friends and family and they ask me what I do on a daily basis, I say I lead the BI practice here at KSM Consulting, and their immediate response is, oh, so you just sit around and build dashboards all day. In reality, I probably spend maybe 10 to 15% of my day working on actual dashboards, because the sole purpose of business intelligence is taking that data that you're creating and generating, maybe blending in some external data sources as well, creating some type of report or dashboard to generate a visualization to help you make better business decisions. At the end of the day, that is what we're going for. And just to reiterate that business intelligence is not a dashboard. So in terms of the BI landscape today, we've categorized this into 4 different areas, from data, consumerization, mobility, and integration. So I think it's no secret to everybody that is on the webinar today that data has proliferated immensely over the last few years and last decade, whether that be from devices connected to the Internet of Things, sensors that we see on our automobiles and manufacturing centers, and with weather, and even the ease of inputting data from Excel to Smartsheets and even SaaS applications such as QuickBooks to quickly generate those balance sheets and profit and loss reports. And then moving over to the consumerization side, this is where we get into the various types of visualization tools. So right now in the market, there's about 4 to 5 major ones, those being Tableau, Power BI, Qlik, SAP's products, and you can do custom applications with a language such as Java. Qlik and SAP's products are mainly focused on enterprise clients. You can do in small and medium-sized businesses, if you have the technical capacity, you can use those custom applications with Java, but most of the small to medium-sized businesses are going to use either Power BI or Tableau. The key distinguishing factor between those two is if you have any geospatial or location-based data, you're going to probably fall into the Tableau camp. And they also spend a lot of their research dollars on determining what the best font is for a specific type of visualization or a specific type of dashboard, and they do the same thing with their coloring as well. So they're much more in the beautifully designed BI camp, while Power BI is Microsoft's product, and their claim and their niche market is integrating directly with Office 365. So if you are constructing a employee dashboard and you need to partition that, it makes it much easier by tying it to Active Directory within Office 365 to make sure the people getting the data are the ones who need it and the information that they're seeing is what they need to see. And then transitioning over to the mobility category, all the dashboards that you are creating and those reports are going to be created on a desktop monitor. So if you think about an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, the information is going to flow from left to right. Well, the nice thing over the last few years, focusing on Tableau and Power BI, is they can now take those desktop curated dashboards and reports and automatically flip those into a into a mobile viewing. So rather than thinking from left to right on that 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, we're taking that dashboard and flipping it into a legal. So rather than going left to right, we're going to go top to bottom, which is how we interact on our phones. So we're going to scroll from top to bottom and interact with our reports and dashboards in that manner. And then flowing to the integration side. So business intelligence got its name from businesses, and a lot of the use cases over the last 5 years have transitioned away from businesses and into organizations. So a lot of schools, city, county governments, and foundations are now using business intelligence. So during my time at the Houston Independent School District, we created an early warning system dashboard, which was essentially tying in attendance data, discipline data, truancy data, and academic data to determine the probability of students dropping out, maybe in high school, or the probability of those students passing the state-administered exam, in grades 1 through 8, and things like that. In city and county governments, they're doing a lot with crime data. So they're taking that location-based data with crime. So they'll take the address, they'll geocode it, and then they can plot that point on a map and create a heat map of where all the crime is occurring in the city. And then they're also integrating technologies where in today's society, we hear a lot from, if you see something, say something. So cities are creating applications to where you can go to their website, you can go to this application. If you see something, you can put it into this form, or if you're on your phone, it'll go into the phone application, and then we can get the data off of your phone, so we can plot where you saw something, and then we can actually plot the point to where the incident occurred as well, so then we can create heat maps on that information as well. So if we see the top 5 benefits here on the screen, one word really pops out to me, and you're not going to be able to get to these 5 benefits without achieving this one word, and that one word is accurate. So without accurate reporting, analysis, and planning, you're not going to be able to have data-driven decision making, improving your operational efficiency, getting in some sort of advantage over your competitors, and achieving that customer satisfaction. So if we think back to what we've currently learned on the BI landscape, it is that business intelligence is much more than a dashboard. You're going to need that holistic BI strategy and that really tailored solution to get to where you need to be. And everything you do has to be accurate. So if the numbers don't match between one person's numbers and another person's numbers, you're in real trouble there. So transitioning away from the current landscape, we're going to take you through 5 somewhat easy. Some of them are complicated steps to get you started with business intelligence in your organizations. The first one is the value proposition. So we'll highlight that. We got a few steps there, and then we'll talk about getting your data in order, how you bring that data to life with those visualization technologies we spoke about in the landscape, and then probably the most important step that often gets overlooked, which is the implementation, communication, and training, and then continually iterating on your reports and dashboards. So the second main takeaway that I want you guys to take from this webinar, so the first one being that BI is not a dashboard, is that when you're developing your value proposition, you really need to focus on accountability, transparency, and the single version of the truth. And this is hard for organizations to grapple. So when we talk about accountability, we're talking about accountability all the way from executives down to the employee that's generating that information as well. And then from on the transparency side, this data is going to be available to multiple people. So it's not just going to be sitting on an individual's computer, and it's not going to be siloed. So we're going to be transparent with the data, and we're going to be accountable with the data as well. And then also linking back to the accuracy component, we're going to have this single version of the truth. So we've all been to those meetings where, Matt shows up to the meeting and he's got one set of information, and then Joe shows up to the meeting and he's got another set of information, and then Steph shows up to the meeting and she's got another set of information as well. It's all hypothetically the same information. We maybe just kept a filter here, took away a filter there, we pulled the data at a different time. And it's really important to have one single version of the truth. And when we accomplish that, we get accountability and transparency and accuracy as well. And that gives us the ability to curate these use cases or projects around financials, potentially leadership dashboard and employee dashboard, and then that can lead to process improvement and solving all those internal challenges that we struggle with. So steps 1B and then 1C on the following slide. I'll take you through a use case and typically how we do this with clients, which is we start out with a BI strategy session, and then we let that kind of sit and simmer for a week, and then we jump into a KPI session as well. So in the BI strategy session, we really want to focus on developing that value proposition of why we want to move forward with a BI strategy. So a lot of you are probably here because a lot of your clients, those in your network, are utilizing business intelligence, and you think that would be a good idea, and I'm glad you all are here. However, it's just not sustainable. That's not going to get you a sustainable BI solution over time. So what we're really trying to do here is tap into that why we want to do this and develop that value proposition. And we do that from really defining what the current state is and defining what's going well and maybe what's not going well. And when we do these sessions, these are typically 2 to 3 hour sessions, we'll spend probably 75% of the time going over what's not going well, which is always a shock to me. It's very easy for people to focus on that, and it is important to know what's not going well, but we also want to focus on what is going well too, and maybe be even better at those things that are going well. So then we switch from the current state to the future state, and we discuss what our goals are, what the mission is, and what the vision is. So we're all familiar with mission statements and vision statements from the organizational level, but here we really want to take the same components that you would do at the organizational level and focus that from strictly the business intelligence framework. So we would create a mission statement and a vision statement for business intelligence, and then we would also loop in some core competencies and some goals for business intelligence as well. And then ideally we would put that into a one-page document. So you'd have that one-page document ideally kind of posted out throughout the office. That way we're promoting that accountability and transparency. And then when we get to the communication and training piece, it lets people know that we are doing this, we are taking steps, that mission and vision and goals, those might change every quarter. So we can see how we're growing along the process as well. And then one of the hard things about business intelligence is it's this big, broad concept. And sometimes it's hard to gain traction within your organization. So one of the things that we always tell clients to do is to determine what success is going to look like in these short time frames. So rather than talking about business intelligence from the standpoint of years, we need to focus on it from months and sometimes even weeks. So what will success look like in the next 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? And then when you have those answers, it's much easier to talk about what's it going to look like in a year, 3 years, and 5 years. So now that we have our value proposition defined and we know what success looks like in those small chunks that grow into the larger chunks, we can now let those ideas simmer for a week and then really attack the KPIs. So if you think about what we're going over today, if you think about it from a hierarchical structure, we're really developing that. The foundation is our value proposition and success. And using the information that we have there, we can generate our KPIs. So when people think of KPIs, they typically think of finance, but I really challenge each of you to organize your KPIs from an organizational, process, employee, and financial standpoint. When I'm talking about process, if you think of a company and a customer calls in and they want an individual to come out and quote some work, so there's going to be some time points here. So they're going to call in, we're going to go out and quote the work, they're going to approve the work, we're going to go out and do the work, and then we're going to invoice them, and then we're going to receive payment. So there are a lot of steps in the process there, and we might want to have some time points between each of those dates that we can develop KPIs off of. So if the time from call to quote right now is, let's say, 2 days, we really wanted to get that to 1 day. So that would be an example of a process KPI. On the employee side, we may be talking about employee satisfaction, average hours worked in a week, how much time they're billing to specific clients, and different things like that. And then on the financial side, we're typically talking about things like revenue, expenses, accounts receivable aging, and different things like that. And then within those big broad buckets, we can talk about definitive topics within the financial bucket. So we can have a bunch of KPIs around revenue, we can have a bunch of KPIs around expenses, and different things like that. So then once we have that foundation of the value, the success, and our KPIs, we can come up with all these business intelligence use cases. So I've been out to many clients, and they might initially think when they call us, there's one or two things that we really need you to do. We go out and we do these strategy sessions, and sometimes we end up with 30 plus BI use cases. So in summary, if we think about those main takeaways, I'm just going to keep driving the point home that the BI is not a dashboard. We need accuracy, we need accountability and transparency. And I think that the other big thing is you don't want to start out too big. You really want to pick a very small use case. That way you can gain traction, you can pick up momentum around business intelligence. And a good one for that is typically a leadership dashboard. It gets you that C-suite level buy-in. And it's not a long-term project. It's a fairly short-term project, and that allows you to deliver something quickly and easily. So the second step in getting all of you started with business intelligence is getting all of your data in order. And this is typically the step in the process that takes the most technical expertise, usually takes the most amount of time, and there's just generally a lot of work that goes into this. What we're trying to do is identify where all of our data sources are, if there's any potential external data sources we want to bring in, if there's any new internal data sources we want to generate, and then we want to take all of those data sources and make sure that we have the ability to have them talk with one another. So when we were going over the landscape, we talked about data warehousing strategies. So before there were a lot of SQL databases, there was a lot of on-prem technology. A lot of that has moved into the cloud with Azure and some ETL tools such as Alteryx that allow you to connect directly to the data via an API or an ODBC connection or something like that, and then blend the data that way. So when we talk about getting your data in order, I really recommend that you guys leverage a data source matrix. So if you see on your screen, you'll see 3 different tables, and here I really want to focus on the third table, which is the BI assessment and data source matrix. So you'll see along the left-hand side, we have IDs of all of the potential data sources. The subject that they relate to, so that would be financials, employee satisfaction. So you want to link those back, those subjects back to your groupings for your KPIs. You identify what the specific data source is. So it could be QuickBooks, and that might live in a database. You might have QuickBooks Online, so it lives up in the cloud. And then you want to identify who that owner is. So who's putting the data into that system, who's the owner, who's accountable for that data. And then you may also want to add an additional column on how often is that data refreshed and some different things like that. So then moving to those other 2 tables really quickly, we had talked about those BI use cases in some previous slides. So here we had the data use cases, and then we would prioritize those based off of the ease and the investment. So you'd see in the third column, we have difficult to easy, and then in the fourth column, we have the investment from low to high. So you would want to have difficult be 1 and easy be 5, and then on the investment side, you would want low to be a 5 and then high to be a 1. So then you add them all up, your highest score should be a 10, and then you prioritize your use cases in that fashion. So step 3 is the fun part where you get to bring your data to life. So this is where you get to use those data visualization technologies that we had talked about. And this is where you really want to move from reactive decision making to proactive decision making. And while that's only a few words, that is very hard to do in practice, especially in a small to medium-sized business where you have experience doing this for the last 15 to 20 years, you've been down in the weeds, you've really been reacting to data rather than being proactive with data. So one use case I wanted to bring to light here is some work we had done for a college up in northern Indiana where they really wanted to know going into their recruitment and admissions process how much financial aid they should give to a potential student in order to get them to matriculate to their campus. So if you look at this quick little dashboard that we created here, we call this the College University Financial Matrix, where we have the adjusted gross income as the rows there along the bottom. So we go from 0 to upwards of $125,000. Then we have their GPA along the right-hand side. So this is about 6 years of data, and what we can do is we can see the GPA of the incoming or the potential student and then tie that back to their adjusted gross income. We can then pinpoint by the filters we have on the right side, whether that's the candidacy stage, the academic program, how far they are from the campus, what their ethnicity is, their gender, and where we obtain, or I guess how we contacted them via the marketing source, how much aid we should actually give them. So this has completely transformed how they're doing the admissions process. So rather than being reactive in determining how much aid to give them, so letting the potential student dictate how much aid, they can now be proactive and knowledgeable about how much aid is actually going to take to get that potential student to campus. So I hit on this before. Step 4 is probably this will make or break your business intelligence solution, strategy, and everything that you've done up until this point. If you cannot obtain organizational buy-in and achieve that accountability and transparency, business intelligence just won't work. So one of the things that we recommend here is some sort of executive buy-in. So you need an executive sponsor to really push the BI initiative forward. And then you really want to have this continuous cycle of communication and training with all of your employees. So even if there are no reports and dashboards currently at your organization, you want to let them know that you're working on it and that they can expect all of these things, all these reports and all these dashboards, and you guys are going to be looking at them, and we're here to promote accountability and transparency. And that's just not at the executive level, that's for the entire company. So you just want to make sure that you do that. And then on the training side, we see time and time again that we create these reports and we create these dashboards and we deploy them, and there's just a big lack of user training. So it's when you're using your phone or using your computer home, when there is like a new banking software, it can be very frustrating if you're forced to use this and you don't know how to use it. And if that happens, there's a struggle, and people just aren't receptive to change, and it can really damage the entire BI initiative in your organization. So the last step in the process is always iterating on your reports and dashboards. So the screenshot that you see here is our employee dashboard that we have here currently at KSMC, and this actually originated as one basic chart within Excel, and it has matured to the current state that we have here, where we have month-to-date goals, month-to-date actual goals. We actually have a forecast in there, and then we can track who we're spending most of our time with in terms of clients. We have some various goals based off of practice management and business development and professional development. You can see how our time is tracked over time from last year to this year. So what has gone from a very simple chart in Excel has really matured into this interactive dashboard that every employee receives and is onboarded with during orientation. And it's still continuing to evolve, and it's an organic thing, and that'll never stop. So now that we've taken you through those 5 steps and gone over the current landscape of business intelligence, this is what you guys really need to know to get you started with a business intelligence strategy in your organization. So you got to construct that value proposition and understand why you want to do it, and really driving home the fact that just because everybody else around you is doing it, it's not a long-term sustainable answer to engage in business intelligence. And then once you construct that value proposition, you should really define what success looks like, really defining that from a short time frame, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, rather than the full year perspective. Get that done, construct your KPIs, codify your data sources, know where all of those are, and then you really need to identify whether or not you have the resources to take something like that on. And from what we've seen, it is hard in the small to medium-sized business space to get dedicated business intelligence designers, developers, and different things like that on staff with a decent salary and benefits, because typically these resources are expensive, and in the small to medium-sized business world, it is hard to ascertain that. So the logical next step, and you guys can do this on your own, is a business intelligence assessment. So we've done these for a lot of clients, and it's been super successful. It's typically a 3-phase process to where we define the current state, we help you guys create that strategic vision, and then we execute on that plan. So typically here, what you would want to, you would go through those 5 steps that we talked about with the value prop, defining what success looks like, codifying all of your data sources, developing that communication plan, and then some sort of iteration on your reports and dashboards. So we would put all of that into this assessment report. We would deliver you that data source matrix, come up with that master recommendations report. We've also in the past designed and mocked up a leadership dashboard and done some different things like that too at the request of the client. Okay, so I kind of hit on a lot of these as we went through, but there are 5 big takeaways. As I mentioned before, BI is definitely much more than a dashboard. You have to understand the why behind your BI initiative. You have to ensure the right tools are in place. So that's talking about the data warehousing, making sure you have the proper data visualization technologies. If you have to do any ETL work, making sure you have all those tools. You want to gain the organizational buy-in. Typically, we recommend that be someone at the executive level, and always to remember that a dashboard or a report is never done. They're organic. They always need to be iterated on and improved, and different things like that.
All right, wonderful. Thanks so much, Matt. We've had a few questions come in as the webinar has gone on. So if you have not had a chance, please go ahead, and on the right-hand side of your screen, you should see a chat box. Feel free to type those questions in, and we will get them to Matt to get answered. If by chance we don't get to your questions today, on the following slide, we're going to have his contact information, so you definitely can send some follow-up questions. So one of the first questions that we did receive is, how long does the BI assessment typically take?
Sure. So BI assessments can range anywhere from about 3 weeks to 6 weeks. So that's the typical time frame that we see in the small to medium-sized business category. That time frame is typically going to depend on the number of individuals we need to talk to during the discovery phase, the number of data sources that are currently housed within the organization, maybe how many reports are currently there, how many dashboards are currently there, and just really the overall timing of getting everybody's calendars lined up and things like that.
Okay, great. Another question that's come in, what's the biggest mistake that you can make when it comes to BI?
Yeah, so we hit on this a little earlier in the webinar, and that's probably starting too big. Starting too big is, you have a project that maybe takes an entire year, a year and a half. It's hard to keep the momentum going with the BI initiative if you pick a project that is that long in time frame. So if that is the only project that you have, I suggest building in specific deliverables, every 30 days or every quarter that you can present, to the organization or to the executives to ensure that the momentum keeps going.
Thanks, Matt. Great, we've got another question that's come in here. Do I need to hire an employee to run the BI tool once KSMC establishes it?
I would say probably not. So in that communication and training plan, a lot of it is also enablement for the organization if we were to take you on as a client. So we would build everything and automate it to where it either runs in the background and you don't have to do anything, or you have to click a couple buttons and the information gets updated as well. So ideally, you would not have to, hire a BI resource to be able to do that.
I think in that same regard, we've got the question about who is the right person at our company to champion a BI project. What does that look like?
Yeah, so I think in the small to medium-sized business category, even though the executives may have, a typical title of like CAO or CIO or something like that, I think anybody in the executive space is a good champion for a BI solution.
Okay, great. So what if a company's current ERP is not open to an API?
Yeah, so if the ERP isn't open to an API, there are some other methods to be able to do that. We've done a lot of work with legacy systems to get that data up in the cloud, whether that's through ODBC connection or some sophisticated ETL work that we can do here. So there hasn't been a time where we haven't been able to get data out of the system. So even if there was not an API, I wouldn't worry about that.
Great. Another question that we have that's come in is, what is the estimated cost to implement the BI plan?
I just knew someone was going to ask that question. I just knew it. So similar to the timing, timing can be 3 to 6 weeks, and the pricing is going to vary as well, and it's going to be correlated to that timing piece. I can't assure everybody that this is priced at the small to medium-sized business level, and I understand that a lot of this is about return on investment, and it is deliverable driven. So we're not going to go out there and charge this exorbitant amount of money just to have us think. So it's all about getting you guys some deliverables, making sure they're action oriented. That way you guys can get some return on investment and drive a BI solution in your organization.
Great. That's all the questions that we have that have come in on our end. So I think if we're going to wrap it up here, we'll take a look. You've got Matt's contact information. So if you do have any follow-up questions, please feel free to shoot him an email. And also, since you have attended, we've got your email address, so we will be sending out a recording of today's webinar, so you're able to watch it and share it again. Matt, anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think that's it. I appreciate everybody hopping on the webinar and taking time over your lunch hour to listen. Appreciate it.